Maybe in capitalistic countries there is a hell, but the Kabbalists claim they know the way to paradise. They say maybe in the capitalistic countries there is a paradise, but nobody knows to explain how did it happen. So you try really to combine the two and then another way. I can also understand about Rahm. Chicago is great, but it wasn't clear what makes us great. And I believe we have decided to keep our greatness, but in the right way. So the two of you really have shown. Now let me say a word about leadership as I say today. Leaders today should not lead. They should agree to be led by the people, in my judgment. That's a great difference. The reason is, leaders cannot lead if they want to. The problems are on one hand, global, and the leader cannot run the globe, even if he wants to. On the other hand, it is very individual. Like, no time, no chapter in history that was like it. And people want to be heard and respected. You know, the squares today are stronger than the camps. The squares today are even stronger than parliaments. And then today, a leader stands up and says, I'm great, I'm strong, I'm this and that. They say, are you? Can you bring an end to the financial crisis? Oh, he says, I don't know. Can you bring an end to terror? He says, I don't know. And actually, he cannot bring an end neither to the economic crisis, nor to the problem of terror, unless the people are with him. And the people will be with him if he will be with the people. So I believe today, leaders are servants, not rulers. I think it's a mistake for a leader to think or feel or behave like a ruler. What he has to do is really to enhance the capacity of the people to express their deep worries. It is not only that leaders cannot lead, but all told, here we are talking about hope, people feel in the depth of their heart that they are unmatched and unprecedented problems. They are not sure about our future. There are two reasons for it. We are so successful in building an artificial intelligence that we are afraid at a point we may lose control over their strengths. And if you learn in competition, with what is being today called the great data, we know so much about us, more than we know about ourselves. And if previously robots were implementing plans, today they are capable of planning too. They have enough information. So we are beginning to feel a little bit uneasy. And there is one unbalanced issue. The second is we didn't respect the natural balance of our earth, of our nature. And we are now beginning to be worried about the revanche of nature against us, overusing the free air, the blue skies, the balance between water and food and happiness. And there is a third point. We are worried about the imbalance between us, or the interface between brain and say computer. The imbalance that we have created, and now we know every moment it can happen. I never thought in my life that fresh air will become a commodity, that you have to buy fresh air. And whether it is in China, that to be today in Beijing is like smoking 2 packages of cigarettes, whether you are in the United States and having every 3 years the appearance of a hurricane, of a storm. But there is a third point too. Majorities are not sure about them. Why? You have to have a majority to do the right things, but you don't need a majority to do the wrong things. A small group of people can destroy our life, and we don't know how to handle them. I mean, there are mental illnesses, there are sadistic people, there are schizophrenic. It doesn't matter how many are there. If they will get a bomb, if they'll decide to burn a city, they can do it. 2 persons can paralyze Boston. 15 persons can come to Manhattan and kill 3,000 innocent people. Or 4 persons can come to Russia and kill 400 children. And we don't know what to do with them. How can we manage ourselves? How can we become leaders of our own self? And those are 3 great major problems that we have to be modest enough to realize them and work with all people to change and avoid those catastrophes.
You said, you don't hear me. So your opening remark was that leaders do not need to lead, but be led by the people, and we're going to touch on that on the second part of the panel. I would like to start...
If you'll just give me a word to make it understood.
You know, it's your birthday, so I'm going to have to give you my reputation of not conducting the panel, so can I go on?
Yeah, you know, I will say, I was in the administration of Israel for 65 years. And I look back and ask myself, on what did I spend most of my time? My answer is of handling frictions among people, leaders, institutions all the time. Then I became president. I don't have an administration, so I don't have friction. And then I decided you don't have administration, you don't have frictions, what can you do? And my answer is instead of governing the people, I'm turning to them and they suggest that they volunteer. Since I'm hanging on volunteering, I believe I can be more effective than hanging on government. The very same people who don't like laws, you'll be surprised to see how quickly and fully they volunteer. And the real power of our time is not power, but the strength of goodwill. That is my real answer.
Mr. Blair, you mentioned on the podium, you gave your perspective on the challenges facing the leaders in the region. And I want to share with you something that every politician, Israeli politician, who goes into office finds himself saying very fast. He says, well, things that you see from this side of the room, you don't see from that side of the room. And I want to tell you that our finance minister, our new finance minister, Yair Lapid, even said that things look different when you know the facts. Now, he is, I must admit, a former colleague of mine and a senior member of the press, so let's put that aside. But I do want to ask you, when you put yourself in the shoes of the Prime Minister of Israel, sitting just across the road from us, can you understand when he says that leadership, responsible leadership, is just waiting to see what happens, letting the dust not lie before you take actions. Can you understand that perspective of leadership when they look at the region from just across the street?
Yes, I do understand it. But I think at the same time, there is precisely with the turmoil in the region, there is also an opportunity to try and get into a process of negotiation and dialogue that allows you to see at least whether, in respect to the Palestinians, you can put it in a better place. Now, I don't think you start with, I mean, by the way, I totally agree with what Rahm was saying about optimism in a leader, and I love the, once I heard you on Chicago, I wanted to move there just so I could vote for you. I mean, Chicago, you don't have to move to vote for us. Take care of it. And, you know, optimism, it is important, and it's important to have it here as well. You know, I always say to people about leadership, if you're a nervous flyer and you get on an aeroplane, you don't want to see a depressed pilot. You want to see someone to live for. You're going to be flying the plane. So, look, of course you can look at the turmoil in the region and say, well, this is not the moment to do anything. But you can look at it and say, this is precisely the moment, without yielding an inch in our security or an inch of principle, that we try. And, you know, I think one of the things I learned in government is that people can always give you 1,000 reasons for doing nothing. But what you actually sometimes need is a really good reason for doing something and moving forward.
From that perspective, from across the street, wouldn't you want to get your jets ready to strike Iran? Wouldn't you want to know that you can do it on your own, or not pass that line that you can't do it on your own? Because as you mentioned, if that leader feels that he has to do what he has to do to defend his people, even against odds, wouldn't you do the same? Wouldn't you say, this is my red line, this is the last one where I can strike on my own, and I have to be ready to be a responsible leader in this region?
Sure, of course you've got to defend your own country, and part of the issue is, by the way, that it would be very nice if the crises came sequentially, right? Something else you learn about leadership, unfortunately they don't. So right now, you've got instability to the south of you, instability to the north of you, you've got the issue of Iran, but you've also got the question of a lasting peace between Israelis and Palestinians. And I'm afraid, and this is why leadership is tough, you've got to have positions on all of those things. So I wouldn't, you know, I'm an absolute believer not just in the security of Israel, but that Israel's security is also our security as well, in the whole of the Western world. So I'm completely clear on this. But, you know, I'm not naive either about the challenges, but I do honestly believe that if we can move the situation with the Palestinians forward, you know, maybe we can't, but it's worth trying, because if we can, that is also important for Israel's long-term security.
Mr. Emanuel, picking up on that question, you were, as you mentioned, with your extensive career, right near the decision makers and these, you know, endless negotiations between the Palestinians and the Israelis. And I wanted to look from the leadership perspective and ask you, do you think the players, it's leadership of the players, or it's just bad luck and they were handed, you know, bad hat instead of cards, and that's the reason for this standstill that we're witnessing?
Let me, before I answer that question, I want to pick up on one thing Prime Minister said. You know, having also served in the legislative branch besides in the executive branch, in the legislative branch, if you voted no, you never had to explain it. A no vote is pretty self-explanatory. If you do something, which is yes, I'm for something, an affirmative thing, that required explanation. But that's what leadership's about. You could get in Congress and just vote no the rest of your time and nothing would ever happen. You also won't leave a thumbprint on history. So that's number one. So I've always believed, as I've said earlier. Second is, and it's kind of the question to your answer is also picking up a little on what the Prime Minister and the President said, and that is, yes, you can look at all the crises and ask for time. First of all, leadership doesn't provide for that, and yet, as I've said earlier, which I firmly really do believe, Never allow a good crisis to go to waste. It's the opportunity to do things that you never thought were possible. And in every challenge, you've got to find an opportunity. That's what a leader does, and then explain why it's in people's own self-interest if they can't see it. And to me, this is when you look at all the opportunities, there was 100 different reasons, be it personality, time, or history, well, somebody's government here, somebody's leadership there, for a reason not to do something. Yet the necessity of doing something would work. And ultimately, I would say this, there's a little too much focus on the process of peace and not enough about the benefits of peace. And I would explain that different to the public. It's not about the process. It is about the benefits of peace and reminding people what the goal is. Because if you keep them there focused on the goal, the process will work itself out.
And I just want to add a quick question because it seems that America is pivoting away from the Middle East, pivoting to China, but also a deeper thing. We saw, I think, in the last elections that the Americans and the American leadership is turning inwards. It has its problems, and some even go as far as saying that President Obama abducted his responsibility to lead the free world. And I wanted to ask you if you think that the concept of leading from behind is leadership.
Well, the problem is that, let me say one thing that would challenge you. I think it would be reckless not to focus on what's going on in the United States as a United States president. And thank God our president's not doing that. There's a lot of challenges, a lot of opportunities in the United States, a lot of things. Had he not focused in the beginning and also all through his presidency on the things that are necessary for economic strength in America, we both are a country of great ideas, but also great economic strength, and that projecting that strength and our economic strength is essential for our leadership around the world, and not to do it would be reckless. So the notion that we're turning in versus that we're not engaged in the world is a false choice, number one. Number two, I think that that's a little too because the metaphor about leading from behind is associated with what happened with Libya. The goal was getting the change necessary, not where America stood in making that happen. And that was, again, reminding people what the objective was. And America's leadership, in my view, has many different mutations. It's not just military, it's economic, it's what is known also by the soft power. And we're still a country that people from around the world want to come to. And I'm a beneficiary of that in the city of Chicago. People from around the world continue to come to the United States. So its power is not just in the power of the size of the quantity of its weapons. It's its economic, it's its intellectual, and its other and its ideals. And that, to me, is what's important. And I think there's a place for where the United States, quote unquote, would lead from the front versus where it would build a coalition, not just of the willing, but the coalition of true parties that want to see a net result. And it has different places and different moments in time require a different posture by the United States.
Finally, President Peres, I wanted to ask you, if you could add one tool to your great toolbox, and I would like your take also very shortly on that. One tool that you think a leader should add to his box today in order to be an equipped leader for the tomorrow with the networks and the Facebook and the bottom-up dialogue with the citizens, what would that tool be?
Well, I think leaders must understand the changes that are taking place before our eyes. We have a new world with an old mind. The task of the leaders is to bring the mind to our age. And I want just to explain in a few words also about President Obama as I see his leadership. You know that today, the famous saying of Huntington, there is a clash of civilization, is not actual. What we are facing is a clash within civilizations. Because once civilizations were homogenic, today you have many civilizations in every country. I don't think President Obama changed America. I think America has changed and elected President Obama. It's a different America. And here I'm coming to the point. America was rather a waspish civilization. Today it is a civilization of many different cultures, which is new. And I think the president has had a problem how to handle an America of differences, not an America of the sameness. And your coalitions won't help. And he did something which I believe is an important contribution. He says democracy is not just the right to be equal, but the equal right to be different. There is nothing wrong with being different. And I want to just, this is the lesson that I think we have to learn in the Middle East. Look, there were times that in the Middle East there were wars among the nations. Now the wars are within nations. And how are we going to stop it? It's civil wars. Look all over us. There is no single country which is cohesive. Neither Syria, nor Iraq, nor Lebanon, nobody. And if an Arab friend would ask me, what can we do? I say, stop fighting in the name of differences. Legitimize the differences between the Shiites and the Sunnis and the Druze and the Arabs and the Jews. So this is a democracy of permitted differences. We don't have a choice, and that is, in my judgment, the real meaning of leadership today.
President Shimon Peres, thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing with us your candid thoughts about leadership. I would ask you all to remain in your seats as President Peres leaves the hall.